This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com. And today, my special guest is a movie producer. He's been involved with the 350 Days movie, which is now on YouTube and Tubi, among other sources that we'll talk about in this podcast. He was involved with The Wrestler. He's a podcaster. He's a wrestling book author and a lot more. Evan Ginzburg, how are you doing today, sir?
Good. Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
As I was telling you off camera, I knew I was interviewing you again. There's another interview with you on this channel if people want to look it up. But I rewatched 350 Days for the second time, and I enjoyed it a lot more. I think I got more out of it. How did you end up getting it on Tubi and YouTube now for free? Originally, it was a paid movie.
Well, our distributor, Gravitas, they put it on there, and it's worked. We've had millions and millions of views, which has only helped the movie. And it's from the heart. We interviewed 36 legends. Superstar Billy Graham, Bret Hart, Greg Valentine, Tito Santana, Paul Orndorff. Many of them, 5 years since its release, have passed. So we're so happy that we preserved, their memories, because a lot of these guys, for example, the Wolfman, who's out of Canada like yourself, it's not like people were chasing down Willie Farkas, the Wolfman, and there he is in the movie. Don Leo Jonathan, towards the end of his life, is in it as well, and so many legends, and they're gone now. Sadly, one after the other. Superstar Billy Graham, who you were close with, of course, and
Angelo Mosca too.
Mosca. I would guesstimate off the top of my head about 15 or so of the people in the movie are gone. Larry Sharp, George the Animal Steele. So, we're happy we preserved whatever they had to say. And like I said, when I got involved with the movie as the associate producer, I said to Darren Antola, the executive producer, I said, there's been tons and tons of wrestling content. I said, do something that would make a non-wrestling fan, an old woman, for example, who never watched wrestling, make a film that would move her, that would really, bring a tear to her eye. And these guys just poured their hearts out, and some of it was guilt, cheating on the road, and regrets, some of the things they wish they had done otherwise. And it's not a bombardment of facts and information. It's, real human beings out of character talking from the heart about spending their entire adult lives as pro wrestlers and the good, the bad, and ugly of it.
The one thing in this movie about Bret Hart, where I've only ever seen him talk about it in his book, is he actually admits to being a cocaine user back in the 80s in this movie.
And he said it in a positive light, saying that, we really opened up and bonded when we were doing this together. And I'm not here to endorse drug use by any means, but I'm just saying he spun it quite honestly. He said, we really got to know each other. That's the exact words he used. We got to know each other because people opened up, and it was behind the scenes. It was Bret. What happened, honestly, we had 80 hours of footage, which you can't use 80 hours in a documentary. So when we honed it down to an hour 50, it was kind of like Bret Hart and Superstar Billy Graham became the stars, because it was like yin yang. Bret Hart is very soft spoken and reflective, and Superstar Billy Graham could have read the phone book. He had so much charisma. and they just kind of balanced each other, and it worked beautifully. And Billy Graham also, as tough a life as he had, and as tough the ups and downs of his career, he says in the film, I would have done it all over again. So that says a lot too. The highs and lows of this business. It's a brutal business, but these guys saw the world on the promoter's dime and had unbelievable experiences. From from incredible to god awful. They lived it all. These men and women. Wendy Richter's in it, but yeah, we're very proud of it, and we're proud that it got good reviews, great reviews, and it's been seen and it's done well. And 5 years after, you realize it's timeless because these guys were timeless. The art that they created, the memories that they left. I mean, I'm a fan. I'm a fan first. And I grew up going to Madison Square Garden, and for the alleged fans who, Billy Graham just punched and kicked, they have no idea. This guy walked down the aisle, no entrance music, no pyro, just sheer charisma, and the building shook. The building shook. And Madison Square Garden, and Triple H and Vince McMahon spinning that, Vince and WWE took it out of bingo halls. Billy Graham would sell out Madison Square Garden and sell out the accompanying Felt Forum on closed circuit TV the same night. 25,000 plus fans. That's how hot WWF was, before Vince took it over. And that's how huge a draw Billy Graham was. And I'm a Billy Graham mark for life, believe me. And yes, I understand Harley Race and Nick Bockwinkel and Dory Funk could wrestle circles around them, but so what? It was apples and oranges. What Billy Graham did was great also. I loved that guy. And it was heartbreaking to see him, pass this year. Heartbreaking.
Yeah, and he suffered a lot before he passed too, which is unfortunate. And the interesting thing, he does hold the sellout record for most consecutive main event sellouts, 19 out of 20. But I saw that the one that he didn't sell out was against Peter Maivia, 17,000 something. But now WWE will call and Madison Square Garden sold out at like 12,000.
Yeah, I was there for Billy Graham and Peter Maivia. Maivia, it was interesting. Maivia, as a face, would headline against Billy Graham, and as a heel, would headline the same arenas against Bob Backlund. He was a huge draw, tremendous wrestler, equally great face or heel, and he passed away at like 45, which was also tragic. Guy was tremendous, tremendous performer.
And also for Billy Graham, I have to say I was with him that weekend. I think it was 2013 WrestleCon weekend where you filmed his parts, and he was so proud that you put him in one of the best suites, if not the best suite of that hotel for the weekend when you filmed those scenes.
Well, treating these guys like human beings, is the way it should be. It isn't always the case. And for guys like Billy Graham to generate millions and millions of dollars to ever need a GoFundMe or whatnot, it's so disgraceful. This is $1 billion corporation. They should, like the NFL, if they set aside half of 1% of the huge money that WWE is worth today to help these guys. Billy Graham passed, and Bushwhacker Butch, both needing GoFundMes at the end. It's disgraceful. The money these guys generated, and to not have pensions, 401ks, health plans. You shouldn't need a GoFundMe to save your house like Paul Orndorff also had. He's in the film as well. And it's like, take care of these guys. These are the men and women who set the stage for WWE to be a billion-dollar industry. Vince McMahon didn't walk into a blank slate. WWF was there already. These guys set it all in motion, and they shouldn't die needing to ask their fans for money. They should be taken care of.
He wouldn't have survived for Billy Graham as long as he did if it wasn't for the fans on the GoFundMe. They literally helped him live probably 2 or 3 more years. And what's the most unfortunate thing to me is he was sharp mentally right up until maybe about the last 6 to 8 months. So he could have still been useful to WWE as far as interviews or maybe helping with promos or writing ideas, but they never used him. I believe they put him under another Legends deal towards the end, where I think at one point they paid him $3 an autograph to sign 10,000 autographs, and they put out a few more of his toys, but they could have made a lot more use of one of the greatest minds ever in wrestling.
Oh, I mean, they clearly have their good list and their bad list, and if you're on the good list, you have a job for life or whatnot. And if you're on the bad list, never the twain shall meet. How do you not put an Ivan Koloff in the WWE Hall of Fame? Et cetera, so on. How is Ken Patera not in the WWE Hall of Fame? If you're not on that good list, if you ever, complained or got on Vince's bad side or whatnot, it's pretty much over for you. And it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate.
Ivan Koloff, I know because I believe I still had Hep C at the time he died. I remember he was trying to go put a GoFundMe out for Hep C medication just a few years before he died, and I don't think he ever was able to get the medication, and he ended up dying related to that. So it's unfortunate because he was one of the all-time greats.
Ivan Koloff headlined Madison Square Garden 13 times. Think of the money just those 13 nights generated. And then he did the entire circuit multiple times. Okay? So again, I'm not exaggerating. When even in 1970s and 1980s dollars, these guys generated millions of dollars. And to not be taken care of, and for Ivan not to be in the Hall of Fame, it's almost absurd. It's just, he beat Bruno for the belt back when it meant something, back when the belt actually meant something. And he was a huge draw and a perennial headliner, and an all-time great performer, and arguably, one of the top 5 foreign heels of all time. How do you not warrant going into the Hall of Fame? In fact, I'm thinking, in 2024, I'm going to spend some quality time in parts unknown and visit the Ivan Koloff wing of the WWE Hall of Fame. It's ridiculous.
And speaking of belts meaning something, they did get the Roman Reigns world titles meaning something. I don't know if it's 1 world title or 2 world title at this point, what they consider it. But then, I don't know if it was a year ago or what, they added a 3rd title. There's also supposedly a world title because Roman Reigns hadn't lost his for so long. Do you think that takes away from the value of a world title when they create I don't know if you want to call it a 2nd or 3rd world title because Roman Reigns doesn't want to go on the road anymore?
Having been weaned on WWF and NWA and AWA champions who wrestled 250, 300 days a year, Ric Flair wrestled 350 days a year. I mean, for Roman Reigns to, come out a dozen or so times in the course of the year and be considered the world champion, to me, it's absurd. And I like Reigns. He's an excellent performer, but he obviously doesn't want to be there. So you have Rollins with this secondary belt, who's really the workhorse, who's defending it all the time. And Rollins is a great performer, but you're the number 2 guy, and Reigns is the number 1 guy, and the number 1 guy's absentee. It makes no sense to me. I understand he'll come into wrestle McIntyre and in Wales. He'll open up a new country, and it's a huge pay-per-view, and the Money Marks have like a religious pilgrimage, and they hop on planes and spend thousands of dollars to see this. But to me, it just doesn't work. You had NWA champions like Dory and Terry Funk and Jack Briscoe and Gene Kaninsky. And every night of the week, these guys were having good, very good, and great matches. And now it's a pay-per-view event every couple of months. So it's almost like boxing, where you barely see the champion defend. It doesn't work for me. Maybe for the now wealthy fans who hop on planes to go to wrestling events, maybe this is their thing, but I don't get it personally. And let me just say one other thing. We used to go to Madison Square Garden once a month. It was on a Monday night. And, it was a blue-collar crowd, and the tickets were priced for a blue-collar crowd. Now, at Madison Square Garden, a ringside ticket is $254. $254. So imagine you're taking 2 kids and the wife and the father, and then you have the gimmicks and the food and the parking, whatever. You're looking at a Christmas present or a birthday present or whatever the case may be, as opposed to a monthly night out. Now the Garden runs 3, 4, 5 times a year. So, you could say WWE is hotter than it ever was, but I don't necessarily agree with that. As far as merchandising, yes, but as far as live events, it's a sporadic thing, whereas it used to be a monthly event. Their bread and butter was the live venues, selling tickets. Now it's selling gimmicks. It's a different world. And of course, the TV contracts today.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize some weekends there's no house shows. And nowadays, 2 or 3 house shows from both brands is a lot for WWE. They are not on the road 21 days a month like they were when Ted DiBiase was on the roster in Hulk Hogan's era.
Yeah, I mean, Hogan, he's crippled up today from the abuse. I mean, he was, love him or hate him, the guy was out there night after night wrestling. They were smart with him. I mean, he did not headline the Garden every month. He would come in, a few times a year. And meanwhile, guys like Greg Valentine and Tito Santana for the Intercontinental belt would headline the Garden, or Piper would come in, Snook or whatever. But it was, Hogan was a fighting champion. And, whether or not you liked his shtick, the 8-minute leg drop or whatever the case. But when Hogan had the right opponent, like an Orndorff or a Piper, he could be great also. Savage, But I was more an old school Bruno and Billy Graham fan, to be honest. And Piper, I love Piper.
Now, I read that you would also attend events at the Nassau Coliseum. For the fans like me who aren't from the New York area, how far is Madison Square Garden from the Nassau Coliseum? And also, what's the difference between crowds at those 2 places?
Oh, very different. First of all, the Garden is in Manhattan, which is the cultural and sports capital of the world. Nassau Coliseum is out on Long Island in the suburbs. So it's not ridiculously far. I mean, you're talking 45-minute drive maybe, but it's just a totally different universe. Nassau Coliseum, Bruno would headline there also, and Billy Graham, whoever the champion was, and they just didn't draw as well. It wasn't the building. Madison Square Garden, we used to call it the Mecca of professional wrestling, and Mecca of boxing also. So the Garden was the A circuit, and Nassau Coliseum was the B circuit, even though it was a major arena. AEW is running their World's End pay-per-view there. I mean, it's a large arena, much like Madison Square Garden. It just didn't have the gravitas. It didn't have the fan base. I mean, I'd see Billy Graham defend the belt there, and it just wasn't anywhere near the crowd that he drew at the Garden. Ditto Bruno, just not the same draw. What was interesting about the Coliseum is they would run some different main events rather than always run rematches from the Garden. Like I saw Dusty Rhodes wrestle Ivan Koloff there, and Bruno and Monsoon wrestle the Executioners. For those who don't know, that was Killer Kowalski and a very young John Studd, who was Kowalski's protege. And they would have some interesting main events that Madison Square Garden just didn't have. Billy Graham, for example, wrestled Tony Garea and Larry Zbyszko and Andre the Giant, and they just had different matches, and sometimes it was magic just to see something unique there. And it was, again, for $3 to $6 or $4 to $7, you would see these all-time great legends up close at ringside, and it was thrilling. Today, you would have to mortgage your house to sit that close at a WWE pay-per-view or even AEW. I went to the Grand Slam cards in Queens at Arthur Ashe Stadium. They were getting $500 ringside for a TV taping, a Wednesday night AEW TV taping. And I don't know how it shifted to fans having this kind of money, disposable income or whatnot, but it's a different beast today. I mean, you couldn't fathom somebody spending $500 for a TV taping. To me, it's absurd. Not worth. I like AEW, and certainly not worth that kind of money. I just don't get it.
AEW right now, of course, the Continental Cup, as you mentioned, will end at that Nassau Coliseum pay-per-view. They're putting pretty much all their steam right now behind this Continental Cup, but ratings last week were down. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of buzz behind it. Is it just because they already have too many titles, or they didn't put enough stars in the tournament? What do you think the reason is?
From my perspective, you know exactly where everybody stands in AEW. For example, you have Moxley and Lethal, two great performers. I'm a fan of both of theirs, but you just watch it and go, Moxley's going to win. You're 110% sure. There's no doubt in your mind. You know exactly where these guys stand. And where's the suspense? Where's the suspense? I would guesstimate 9 out of 10 AEW matches, I'm 100% sure who's going to come out on top. And it doesn't make it better that it's predictable. And same thing with WWE pay-per-views. I mean, I was watching Survivor Series, and the result of each and every match, and the guys do the same shtick they've been doing for 10, 15, 20 years. The Miz has been there for 17 years. Orton's been there, 20 years? And they come out and do the exact same thing. And I think the fans, the WWE fans, it must be a comfort to them, the familiarity of it all. But to an old school fan who's seen the best of the best for 50 years, I've been attending since 1974 and watching prior to that. I mean, to say, well, this guy's 100% going to beat that guy, and it doesn't make for riveting TV. And I could understand why the ratings aren't going through the roof. I'll say another thing. I watched the last AEW pay-per-view 2 weeks ago. I watched Survivor Series. Out of all of those matches, I believe there were 11 AEW matches, and including the pre-show, 5 WWE matches at Survivor Series. I would consider one of the 16 matches, quote unquote, great. That was Swerve Strickland and Hangman Page. That's the only one I'll remember years from now. So how do you have these two all-time great talent bases, WWE and AEW, unbelievable talent bases, and in 2 cards, 2 nights, God knows how many hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, you had one great match. You would go to a NWA Crockett house show in the 80s, and those loaded house shows were better than these AEW and WWE pay-per-views. And that's I'll take it another step. Ring of Honor, circa late 2000s, let's say the Nigel McGuinness era, where you had Bryan Danielson and Kevin Steen and Claudio and all these guys. I would say those shows were better than current AEW and WWE pay-per-views. The great matches are few and far between. And in WWE, I would say Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins was great, and Reigns and Sami Zayn was great, but little else would I qualify as great. Plenty of good and very good, and ditto AEW. Everybody's fixated on CM Punk. You could count his great matches the past few years in AEW on maybe 2 hands, and I'm a fan of his saying this. Where are the great matches? I mean, does that not matter anymore? Is it all about the entrances and the quote unquote, brilliant storylines? How many storylines in WWE the past few years have really intrigued us? Daniel Bryan climbing to the top, the Bloodline, not too many others in WWE that you are emotionally invested in, like when Zbyszko turned on Bruno, emotionally invested in. Rare. It's very rare, and that could be the answer. Why are ratings down? Why are house shows, struggling in certain situations?
Yeah, and I agree that Reigns against Sami Zayn had a lot of heat, but the reason I couldn't be interested in that match is because you knew Roman Reigns was going to win.
Oh yeah, you knew he was going to win. That's going back to my other point. You know who's going to win virtually every match. Yeah.
Yeah, the only one that we don't know is if he fights either Cody Rhodes or CM Punk at WrestleMania. Then it might be up in the air, but until then, we've known for the whole year he's going to go undefeated.
They have packages, VIP packages that they advertise starting at $23,000 for ringside for WrestleMania 40 in Philly. So you would like to think that maybe one match, you don't know who's going to win for these money marks spending $23,000 or more. It's a little suspense, please. Please, Triple H. Triple H gets this whole, he's a genius. He's the savior. To me, 80% of what he pumps out is instantly forgettable, vanilla pablum. Ditto, Vince, who is probably 90% what he pumped out was crap. So, and I like AEW more, but predictable is not a good thing. It's just not.
The thing that I don't like about Triple H is he brings back a lot of wrestlers who haven't worked at all since they've been released. So it's not like when Cody Rhodes wasn't with WWE, he got really hot in other companies like Top Dollar, for instance. I don't think he had one match in between the time he was fired. and he just brought him back because I guess he was one of Triple H's guys. And there's been a bunch of people like that. So I guess that's just the way wrestling works now. You don't have to be like have a buzz about you to get hired anymore.
Well, they all have their good list and their bad list. And, the fans are raking Tony Khan over the coals for losing Punk to WWE. But what about the other side of the story? WWE had guys like Swerve Strickland, and they let him slip through their hands, and AEW is making him into a huge star. And he has the best of his career ahead of him. CM Punk has the best in the rearview mirror. He's pushing 50. So, it works both ways. AEW loses guys to WWE, and WWE loses guys to AEW. And all I want to see is great wrestling. If I'm spending 2 hours on a Wednesday night, I want to see great wrestling. If I'm watching a 3-hour WWE pay-per-view, impress me. I mean, it can't just be this flat. I get a sense of numbness sometimes watching a WWE pay-per-view. Those singles matches between the two War Games the other night at Survivor Series, they were utterly predictable, and it's just like a placeholder, a time killer between the two War Games matches. And let me say this. As somebody who attended the NWA War Games with the Horsemen and the Road Warriors, I mean, that was a pimple on the ass of the NWA War Games. Come on, be honest. It just didn't touch it. It doesn't even deserve to share the same name. It was instantly forgettable and predictable.
And you mentioned Ox Baker being in your 350 Days movie. There's a popular clip on the internet of a Cleveland riot that Ox Baker incited. Do you think they would ever let a wrestler get that much heat these days? It seems now the moment wrestlers get heat, real heat, the fans will backlash and they'll have to apologize for it or something like that, where the company will like slow down the push or change it. Do you ever think there'll be real heat like that? I mean, we saw it with the NWO and WCW for a while too.
One, people today don't understand the fan mentality of a 70s fan, which I was. And we, for the most part, were marks. This was pre-internet. And even if you weren't a mark, you had the suspension of disbelief, and you generally cheered for the face and hated the heel. And Bruno or Pedro or whomever was a god to you. And when Bruno lost the title at the Garden, I was not there. I was too young for that. But when Bruno lost to Ivan Koloff, they said you could hear a pin drop. It went silent. Bruno was quoted as saying he thought he had ear damage, that he thought he lost his hearing. That's how silent it got. And people wept. They sat there crying because we loved him. He was a hero to us. So I just don't think in 2024, 23 going into 24, unless you're mentally ill, I think it's a work. And I don't think you're going to riot or rampage. Every once in a while, I'll see a clip on YouTube. Some idiot fan at an indie, goes after the wrestler, and the wrestler clocks him, because the guy's just not playing with a full deck. But I think for the most part, the days of fans getting so enraged that they're going to tear the building down, I don't think that's going to happen. I think fans today like to be the show, be the focus. They'll let you know they have disdain for this wrestler or this promoter or whatnot. But I don't think they're going to storm the ring. Johnny Valiant told me a story. He said he was up in Canada and the place rioted. The Valiant brothers were the #1 tag team in the world in the 70s. he said Butcher Paul Vachon saved his life. He was like a big bull of a guy, and he was knocking down these fans who were trying to kill Johnny. And Johnny was like the most lovable guy. He did stand-up comedy. Johnny prided himself. He said, I never once got into a bar fight. I never once got into a fight with a fan. He liked people. He was a people person. But, fans back then believed, and they would storm the ring. And, I just don't think that same level of heat is there. I mean, I hear every once in a while fans cursing a good heel. Christian's a good heel on AEW. So I think fans can get caught up on it. But I don't think they're going to risk arrest and injury to storm a ring these days, for the most part, unless you're nuts. Unless you're nuts.
Now, for the wrestler, you sent me that picture of you and Mickey Rourke that I used for the screenshot of this video. And I didn't realize until I rewatched the video that picture was from an actual scene in the movie where they're doing the autograph scenes. You were actually in the movie as well in that scene. What was Mickey Rourke like?
Mickey Rourke was a pleasure to deal with. I never saw him turn down an autograph or a picture. The guy was just a pleasure to deal with. And the story behind that scene, I was on set, and most of the merchandise in that scene was mine. I helped with the set design on that in the autograph scene. And if you look around the room, those guys look pretty menacing, but most were actors. The only legitimate wrestlers that were there were Manny Yarborough, who was a sumo. He worked UFC. He was an 800-pound sumo. Lovely guy. He's gone now. And Johnny Valiant. Johnny Valiant without the dyed blonde hair. He had gray hair and his head was down on the table. So some people don't even realize Johnny was in that scene. But to make a long story short, I was on set, and all of a sudden, Darren Aronofsky gets this smirk, and he goes, Evan, come here. So I walk over, and he goes, walk around, talk to everybody, walk up to Mickey last, ask him for an autograph and a Polaroid. So Mickey whispers in my ear, he goes, just improv it. He thinks I'm an actor. I've never acted in my life. It's surreal. So I do exactly what they say. There's like 125 people there. These giant cameras in my face. It's bizarre, absolutely bizarre, surreal. And the whole time I'm thinking, what am I going to say to Mickey? Because we're improvising it. So I walk up to him and I say exactly what I would to like a childhood hero. I said, I saw you at the Garden. I loved you as a kid. Can I have your autograph? And he looks at me and he says, what's your name? So now I'm thinking, because it's a movie, I go, Evan. I go, and I'm thinking, this is utterly like it feels like you're in a weird dream. I'm playing myself in a fictional movie. So he signs the thing, and jump ahead a year or so, and we're at the New York Film Festival, Lincoln Center. There's 4,000 or so people, sold out, and I'm sitting with my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, and I don't know if I made the final edit. I wasn't involved in the editing of the film. I was basically the wrestling guy. I brought in all the wrestlers, anything wrestling related. So I'm sitting at Lincoln Center watching the movie, and all of a sudden, there I am in the autograph scene, and my girlfriend, now my wife, says to me, "That's you!" It was utterly surreal. And the other memory from that night was in the scene where Mickey says to his daughter, or I should say Randy, the character, Randy the Ram, says to his daughter, I'm just a broken down piece of meat. I look around me and everybody's crying. Everybody's crying. And I said, God, we've spent 7 years off and on working on this film. 7 years from the first meeting I had with them to sitting at the New York Film Festival, and it works. It works. People are crying. You can't fake that. And I tell people that night at the New York Film Festival, I said, that was the best night of my life. You put 7 years into something. We got a spontaneous standing ovation, and it was just beautiful. And to this day, people tell me what the film means to them, and people in the industry have told me over the years what it's meant to them, and we're very, very proud of it. And to Darren Aronofsky's credit, he wanted everything to ring true. For 6 months prior to shooting, and we only shot it in 35 days. We had a $6 million budget, which would be like the food budget on a Marvel, like Avengers movie. We had $6 million, which is nothing for a film today. And he wanted it all to be real. We sat in indie, dressing rooms, talking to guys like King Kong Bundy and picking their brains. And Darren did his homework. Basically, Darren and Scott Franklin, the executive producer, the money guy, and the screenwriter, etc., the screenwriter as well. I mean, they were casual 80s wrestling fans who, Piper and Hogan and Orndorff, like millions of others who got away from it over the years. And these were not, hardcore wrestling experts or historians, which is why they brought me on board. And, we're very proud of what it, turned out to be, and the success that it had. And, it's going, I tell people 100 years from now, people will watch that movie and it will move them. And Mickey's performance reminds me of Brando and On the Waterfront and other iconic performances. The performance is better than the movie itself. It's an iconic performance, but it's a damn good movie. And I'm proud to be part of it. And it's one of the great, parts of my life. And it's 15 years ago already. It's hard to believe. Time goes by, and there are people in that film as well that are gone.
Oh yeah, I think the steroid dealer guy passed away, and a bunch of others. But I didn't identify with it as much or understand it as much when it first came out. Only being in the business about 5 or 6 years at that point. Now that I've been in it so long, I can identify with it a lot more. And I've seen a lot of wrestlers who are like that character. But I think one of the saddest scenes, the saddest one to me, is where he goes out and he gets wasted and he misses the date with his daughter.
Yeah.
That one really. I had to pause it after that because I didn't want to watch further. When I rewatched it, I had to take a little break because it was so sad.
Yeah. Well, what I also say to people is, much like Rocky, you don't have to be a wrestling fan to appreciate the wrestler. You don't have to be a boxing fan to appreciate Rocky. Ballpark figure, there's 15 or so minutes of actual in-ring wrestling in the wrestler, and there's 15 or so minutes of actual boxing in Rocky. So you need a great plot and a great central character and a tremendously well-written script. And there were a half dozen or so revisions to that script. For example, in the original, when Randy blades himself, all the wrestlers are watching. They're all watching. And I said to the crew, I said, that wouldn't happen in pro wrestling. It's just another night at the office. Nobody would care. And they took it out of the original script. So again, they wanted it to ring true. They kept honing that script. And it was, it was, the whole thing was just a joyful experience, and I'm glad it was Mickey's comeback. He did not get rich from that movie, but it made him hot again. And his real payoff for the wrestler was Iron Man 2. He got $1 million for Iron Man 2. The wrestler brought him back. So, and he's worked ever since. So, and he deserves it. The guy's a tremendous, tremendous actor. If he did a lot of great work prior to the wrestler as well. And I think he's actually underrated. I think he deserved the Oscar for it, to be honest. And I'm not saying it just because I was part of it. He won the Golden Globe, Best Actor in the entire world, the Golden Globe, for that performance. So it was just tremendous, tremendous.
I haven't seen the movie, but Tank Abbott told me his favorite movie is Barfly with Mickey Rourke.
Oh yeah, Barfly's rough. Barfly's rough. I mean, he plays an alcoholic, and Faye Dunaway. They're a mess. They're both a mess. It's a great film. Great, again, another great performance. Yeah.
Now, I know you're writing a book on John Tolos, who younger fans might only remember as the coach in WWE, which I'm not. Maybe you could tell the story of how the coach came about, but of course, like, that's nothing compared to the legacy of John Tolos. So, what led you to getting involved with this book?
Again, wrestling often goes back to your childhood memories, and your watching wrestling with your dad, going to wrestling with your dad, and now your dad's gone. And we, in New York, we would get the LA TV tapings every week, and the biggest star in LA was John Tolos. And Tolos wrestled Fred Blassie at the LA Coliseum, and it was the precursor to WrestleMania. They had like 27,000 people in there. They had it on closed circuit TV throughout LA. It was a huge, huge event. And it was a super card. The Sheik wrestled Bobo Brazil on it, etc. So on. Mel Mascaras was on it. Tolos was one of the great, great talkers. He was a average sized guy. If he walked down the street, you probably wouldn't notice him. He was a regular size. He was in good shape. I mean, he was a gym rat. He was in good shape, but he was not one of these monster superhero, supervillain types. But this guy could talk you into a seat. I mean, this guy was one of the all-time great talkers. And unfortunately, the LA promoters, like so many promoters back in the day, they were so cheap that to save $25 or whatnot, they would tape over the previous week's TV shows, okay? They would actually tape over it. They had no vision that there was value to these old TV tapings. So a lot of Tolos's legacy is gone. So one, my father loved Tolos. I love Tolos. Tolos wrestled Bruno at the Garden. That was a thrill. I got to see that. But part of it was many years later, when Herb Abrams was running New York, Tolos came in as a manager, and Abrams gave me press credentials, and I went backstage and I interviewed him. And he was such a gracious, lovely guy, humble, just a great guy. And it just always bothered me, like when I talk to modern fans, many of them are like, who's Tolos? Or wasn't he the coach? So what happened was Vince McMahon, who gets this genius label, he brings in one of the great talkers of all time and doesn't let him talk. He puts a whistle in his mouth. Blow the whistle. It'll be annoying. So he doesn't let the guy talk. It was ridiculous. And Tolos wasn't happy with it. It didn't get over. It lasted maybe 6-7 months, whatever it was. And it was over and done with. And Tolos was one of the all-time great heels, one of the all-time great talkers. He ruled California for a decade back when California was, a pretty major territory. And it's a shame that, quote unquote, history hasn't been kind to him. So what we're doing, Dr. Mike Lano and myself, it's an oral history, We've interviewed his son. We've interviewed, many of the wrestlers that worked with him. And, again, it's from the heart. You're not going to sell 1 million copies. Half his fan base is dead at this point. You're doing it, create art because it's meaningful to you, And it's just something I felt I needed to do, And in 2024, I'll have another book. It's called Wrestling Rings, Movie Sets, and this is Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets, and it's 100 short stories about my life, making movies, being involved in wrestling in different capacities, and also as a teacher, as an educator, because what people don't understand is just because you make a documentary does not mean you get rich from a documentary. It's a tough business, the movie business. Like I said, Mickey Rourke didn't get rich from doing The Wrestler. It's a tough business. And so I chronicled 100 stories, including the making of The Wrestler, and much of which hasn't been told before. And it was an amazing experience. And Darren Aronofsky is a true artist. And if you see The Whale, it's also heart-wrenching. Darren knows how to get a great performance out of an actor. And I sat, when I saw The Whale, in a movie theater. The credits rolled and nobody got up. They were so emotionally drained. We all just sat there, like trying to get the energy to put on your jacket and get out of the chair at the movie theater. That's how powerful The Whale was also. I have nothing but respect for Darren Aronofsky, because I'll tell you another quick story. We were having trouble getting the funding for The Wrestler because Mickey Rourke's star had waned at the time. Okay, it had waned. And at one time, we actually went to meet with Nicolas Cage. And Darren was considering him because Nicolas Cage at the time was big box office. So I'm sitting with Darren one day at his studio in Brooklyn. And Darren says to me, "Evan, Mickey's the right guy. He's the right guy, and he rolled the dice and he won. He went with his heart rather than this guy's bigger box office, this guy's a bigger star." And after we did The Wrestler, I said to Mickey, "What did you think of it?" After we had seen screenings at film festivals. And he goes, "I can't watch it." He goes, "I can't watch it. It reminds me of my life." He was on top as an actor. Next thing you know, he's getting punched in the face as a boxer. This isn't a normal trajectory. He was a major movie star. Next thing you know, he's boxing and getting beaten up. He's a legit tough guy. And but my point being, he had his descent also, just like the Randy the Ram character. So nothing but respect to all these guys, because they're the real deal.
Yeah, and for fans that don't know what you're talking about, Mickey Rourke was extremely popular in the 80s, and then for some reason, I think he was disillusioned with Hollywood. He just became a boxer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and he took a lot of brain damage apparently during those years.
Well, I don't, I always found him to be sharp and intelligent, but facially, I think there was some damage. He didn't have that matinee idol look by the time he did The Wrestler. Obviously, time had passed as well, but he's like a tortured artist. He's a good guy and he believes in his craft, but he's suffered. He's been through some pain, and but again, a lot of his work, like Diner and Barfly and The Wrestler, it'll stand the test of time. When he's long gone, this guy created some art. This guy's not pumping out, the Marine 1, 2, 3, and 4 like WWE Studios. He's shooting for art with a lot of his films, and I respect that. I respect that. Sometimes a John Cena who did Fastlane, you might want to turn down a project or two if it's crap. Sorry. You're doing well. Create art. Don't create content.
Yeah, and Cena has been very successful in the movies. I mean, he was even in the Barbie movie, which he probably made a fortune for.
Yeah, he's very successful and he's not hurting for money. So you can turn down a silly reality show or some voiceover work, or create art. The Rock is at that point too. We don't need another superhero movie. You've made hundreds of millions of dollars. Create art, and I respect their talents, but a lot of what they create is just not the level of what their talents are capable of. And Aronofsky's not going to do a crap action movie. That I could tell you. You can turn down projects if you I was offered plenty of projects over the years where I said no, thank you. It's I'll tell you a funny story. Getting back to 350 days, when I was offered that, at first I was not interested. I just said, we're never going to top The Wrestler. Why am I doing another wrestling movie? But the executive producer, ironically also named Darren Antola, he was so from the heart. He was like, oh my God, I love Snooker and Orndorff and Piper. We were like-minded wrestling people. And I said, Darren, we don't need another documentary. The guy's got 5,000 action figures in his house. And, I said, if I'm going to do this, we really have to do something, heartfelt, really do something. And he agreed. And again, don't just create content for the sake of content. WWE turns out, it's an assault on your senses after a while. It's penance for sins committed in previous lifetimes, much of what these guys pump out on a Monday or Friday night. And the world doesn't need it. Shoot high.
Yeah, I think I'll have to agree with Vince Russo on this one. When WWE actually loaded up their NXT show when it went head to head with AEW a few weeks ago, they actually brought the content up to a good level, and it's not like they can't do that if they put more effort into it.
Well, I think they have this very safe, PG corporate product, and they don't want to be too risky or edgy. But at some point, like Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, those were rough matches, and they can shoot higher if they choose to. And I'm not anti WWE wrestler. I'm anti WWE corporation. That's a big difference. They have some amazing, amazing wrestlers, and often they're squandered. I mean, Nakamura, they absolutely neutered. Nakamura was top 5 in the world at one point in New Japan. What they did to that guy, and most Japanese talent and most of the luchadors they've brought in, they've just squandered them. And why not unleash them? Let them do what they're capable of doing. This same 5 moves, do exactly the same finisher every match. It doesn't motivate me to watch hour after hour, but I basically just watch their pay-per-views or whatever they call it now. And that's basically the only every once in a while I watch a WWE documentary or some old school stuff that they have on Peacock or whatnot. But I have really no interest in watching their TV.
There's too much of people standing around in the ring talking, reading off scripted promos for me in the ring. Because if I don't like somebody, I'm not just going to stand in the ring for 17 minutes talking to them.
Yeah, and that's another thing. The stilted, scripted, inane, brain cell killing promos. The only ones that really seemed to work was the Bloodline. The Bloodline. I mean, you have 50 other storylines, and most of them went nowhere. So why not let the people who could actually talk? Like Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens could talk. Let him talk. Don't let some guy who can't talk do a scripted promo. It's painful. It's actually stultifying. And so-and-so has a major announcement this week. Okay? It's okay. But make it interesting. Make it riveting. Don't make it where it's robotic. Guys just robotically, mumbling some nonsense about a match that you don't even care about to begin with. They just announced Nakamura is going to wrestle Cody. Who cares? Everybody wants to get to Cody and Reigns. We just don't care. Cut to the chase. We don't need the 10-minute speech, the 17-minute speech.
Yeah, I agree with that. Nobody, I mean, if Nakamura couldn't beat Rollins, we all know that he's not going to beat Cody, so there's just little interest in that. But one last question here, as you've been generous with your time. Pubert Bartholomew Jr., I don't know if you were involved in this scene or not, but could you talk about the deli counter scene in the movie The Wrestler and how that came about? He loved that scene.
Yeah. Oh, I was there for the filming. That was scripted. That was planned. But like much in the movie, there was always a little improv going on, and I mean, that scene was very powerful. Again, I was the wrestling guy, so I was involved with anything wrestling related. So I was not directly connected to the deli scene. I just happened to be there when they filmed it. And Mickey is an improvisational genius, and he'll just come up with an idea, and if it worked, Darren rolled with it. And what was interesting, which fans may not know, in some of the wrestling scenes, those were real wrestling fans. We did not have the budget, for the most part, to hire extras for these wrestling scenes. So we would roll into a Ring of Honor show. I was very friendly and still am with Carrie Silken and the Ring of Honor crew. So we would roll in, and those were some serious fans. They loved their wrestling. So they were not happy that we were interrupting their wrestling show. Okay? So at one point, they were actually getting a little hostile. And Darren was doing things on 1, 2, 3 takes. It was almost like guerrilla filmmaking. He didn't have the luxury of doing 20 takes from all different angles because these fans did not want us at these shows. So At one point, Darren actually gets on the mic. It's almost like the last scene, in the movie. Darren gets on the mic to the Ring of Honor fans and pleads with them, guys, I promise we'll do you proud. We'll do you proud. Just let us get in one more take. We'll be out of here in a few minutes, So it was a wild ride doing that film. And I'll tell you one other thing that the average person wouldn't have access to. At the wrap party, the final party, after it was all shot and done, and the cast and crew and everybody was there. I could curse on your show, right, Hannibal?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So Darren's making a speech. We finished the film right afterwards, and I'll never forget it. He has this little microphone, and he goes, I don't know what the fuck we have, but we have something. And I'll never forget it. And he was right. And he really pulled it off. And I've yet to see the Iron Claw. I hear good things about it, but I wish it nothing but success. But I think you can safely say, at least up to 2023, The Wrestler is the greatest film ever made on wrestling, and it'll be hard to top. And his performance will certainly be hard to top. And again, I'm very grateful to have had the experience and for it to live on in posterity. And in the future, we hope to create more good things like 350. And, wrestling is a fascinating business. It's like Dusty Rhodes. I wined and dined with kings and queens and, ate pork and beans, whatever his shtick was. There's some real highs and lows to this business. And there's endless stories and moments to be captured. And Hannibal's done it himself, thousands of hours of great content. And a lot of the guys Hannibal's interviewed are gone now. So he's preserving history as well. So, and much respect to Hannibal. And I sincerely appreciate all his support for me over the years and the things we've done. And it's always fun coming on the show and reminiscing about everything.
For sure, and I'm sure we'll hopefully have you back again in the future. But to close this off, do you want to just remind people where they can get your book, watch your movies, and follow you on social media?
Sure. We have a film that we re-released. It's called Wrestling Then and Now, and that's available on Tubi and Amazon. Killer Kowalski, Don Dr. Death Arnold, Nikolai Volkov, Homicide. That's an interesting mix. You could check that out. Shot on Pennies from the Heart. I'm the senior editor over at Pro Wrestling Stories, and check out some of the 900 or so history articles on Pro Wrestling Stories. Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets coming out. The book, 2024. How Do You Spell Wrestling? TOLOS, the John Tolis Oral History. That's coming out as well. And you can follow me on Evan Ginzburg's Old School Wrestling Memories on Facebook, and that'll keep you up to date with everything. And 350 days, Amazon, basically everywhere. Check out Amazon first, but except for Netflix, 350 Days is not hard to find. It's also, you can watch it free on YouTube at this point as well. So enjoy it. And thank you again, Hannibal. Really do appreciate it. This hour just flew by. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews,